Okay, so good afternoon once again, everyone, and welcome to IBA 614 Global Marketing. Today is our 11th session, and in today's session, we'll be covering the first part of our discussion on the global marketing mix. Now, as usual, there are certain learning outcomes we hope to achieve by the end of the session. The first one is to be able to discuss the influences that lead the firm to either standardize or adapt their marketing mix for the global market. And then secondly, we will be able to explore how international marketing Secondly, okay, sorry about that. Secondly, we will also be able to explore how international marketing mix strategies are formulated in terms of product decisions, pricing decisions, distribution decisions, and then promotion or communication decisions. And for today's first part, we will be looking specifically at product decisions and pricing decisions. Now, before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that during the session, please feel free to draw my attention when you have anything you want to contribute, any question you have, kindly let me know so that we can address it before we move forward. So in the absence of anything, we will start. All right. So let's begin by talking briefly about the global marketing mix. Now, the marketing mix, as we all know, are the tools that marketers have at their disposal and are able to manipulate in order to convince customers that they have the ability to satisfy their needs and to convince customers to patronize whatever product or service that they are offering them, to be able to, in the end, achieve mutual objectives between the firm and the customer, and then also make a profit. Now, when firms enter foreign markets, they have to make specific decisions regarding each element of the marketing mix, just like they would do if they were in a domestic setting. However, with the scale and nature and complexity of global marketing operations, the decisions regarding the marketing mix become slightly more complicated than they would if they were making them in terms of the domestic setting. So marketers would largely focus on decisions concerning their marketing mix in terms of global marketing into more stringent detail than they would if they were perhaps doing it in a domestic setting, given the vast number of factors and issues that come into play when marketers are marketing to customers on a global level. And when it comes to the global marketing mix specifically, the focus of the global marketer is about, on one hand, whether to use a standardized approach towards utilizing the marketing mix or to employ an adapted approach towards utilizing the marketing mix. And I will explain both of them momentarily. Now, when we talk about standardization basically means the global marketer develops a standardized product and markets it to customers in foreign markets using a standardized marketing mix. So they basically take the product as is, as manufactured from the home country, and then sell it as is in foreign markets using the same set of marketing mix elements, be it pricing, promotion, distribution, as well as other techniques in their marketing mix arsenal, and use it the same way as they would in the home country and apply it to the foreign market without making any specific changes or adaptations. That is what we mean when we talk about standardization. And there are several arguments that researchers have made in the past, with regards to standardization and why it is of benefit. The first one is in terms of simplicity and lower cost. You will all agree with me that to be able to set up a marketing mix that is unique for each of the foreign markets that you serve, assuming you have more than, say, 5 or 6 or 10, would require some significant investment of resources, be it financial or non-financial, and will take a lot of time and effort. Therefore, using something that is standardized, that you can easily take from the home country and apply to your foreign markets without any significant modification or changes, will simplify the whole process for you. And in the same vein, reduce the amount of cost that you incur, because you are basically not making that much of a change. You are using the same thing you've been using. It also brings about consistency in terms of your company and your product image, because the same image that you have been selling in the home country is the same image that you will carry as is and sell to customers in foreign markets with regard to your company as well as your product. So it brings about some level of uniformity and consistency. And with this uniformity and consistency comes improved coordination, because you are just basically coordinating the same thing you have been doing in the home country across a number of other markets. So it becomes easier to be able to tie everything in together. And more specifically, when it comes to the marketing of products and services to businesses, we realize that based on industry and sectoral specifications, there's very little modification you can do to specific products and services that are sold for use in specific sectors. So for instance, if it's a certain kind of fiber cable that you are selling to telcos in Ghana, there's a particular specification that those cables must have for you to be able to sell them to telcos in South Africa, or perhaps telcos in another country in a different continent. The specifications have to be the same, per industry standard. So in that vein, with regard to selling to businesses, in respect of specific industry and sectoral specifications, standardization here becomes non-negotiable, because then you have to stick to these specifications and you can't go out of them to make any significant modification. However, regardless of all these arguments that we have made for standardization, standardization is not always successful in global markets, especially when we are dealing with B2C consumers and not necessarily B2B consumers. B2C here referring to business to consumer transactions, and B2B here referring to business transactions. And a typical example of this is what happened to Mattel when they were trying to sell their blonde Barbie to all little girls around the world. They took one product that they had designed for a particular market in the United States and thought that it would be perfect for every little girl all over the world, because they assumed that every little girl is the same. They like dolls, they like to play with them. However, they ignored the differences in terms of demographic, in terms of culture, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of values that people around the world exhibited. And they also forgot that they were selling the Barbie dolls for little girls to play with, but they were essentially selling them to parents to buy for their little girls to play with. So their standardization approach did not really work out for them. And very soon we will go into detail on how they admitted this fault and have taken relevant steps to be able to rectify it over the years. They have still not gotten it right, but at least they are making significant strides to be able to fix the problem. So that is a typical example of how standardization can go bad for a company. In that regard, researchers are now pushing for adaptation, which on the other hand, yes, Salio, please come in.
Hello, Doc.
Yeah.
From the previous slides on what standardization is,
yeah.
It says that it's standardized products in foreign markets using standardized marketing mix elements. Must they necessarily satisfy these two criteria before you would say a company has standardized? Because, for instance, the example that you gave in telecoms, if you are selling fiber cables, the cable is standardized. It's not going to change because that's the nature of the technology. But in terms of the marketing mix, it might change from country to country. Would you say this is also another form of standardization or not, or it's adaptation?
Okay, so literature has it that we can define standardization to the extent of allowing for minute forms of adaptation. Sally, are you there? Sally?
Yeah, Doc, I'm here.
Yeah, okay. So I was saying that the literature allows us to define standardization to the extent of allowing for minute forms of adaptation, but it should be very limited. And especially where the level of adaptation that you are using is minute, it should also not affect the core product. So as you will learn very soon, there are varying degrees of standardization. And standardization in itself becomes more difficult as you go to various layers of the product. So standardization here, as we are talking about, refers to mainly the core product. So you can standardize the core product to the extent where you can only make certain minute changes. So if the formulation is the same and there's a minute change in terms of, say, the packaging, where Coca-Cola perhaps may taste the same in Ghana and then perhaps in Russia, but the only difference is the language on the bottle, then we can say to a large extent it is standardized. But where adaptation comes in is where the standardization has been eroded so much that even the actual formulation of the core product is different. Sally, does it make sense?
Yes, Doc, it does.
Good. Good. So that is why a lot of people argue that then we can't say standardization if at least some change is made. Because the moment you change something, then it's no longer standard. And there's still argument in the literature about this. Yes. So for me, I always say adaptation, because the moment something is changed, even if it's the minutest thing, you have changed it somehow. So it's adapted.
Yeah.
And like I said, the debate is still ongoing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Sally. Okay, so on the basis of this, there's another school that says that we can't say standardization if even one small thing is changed. Yes, Michael, please come in.
Yeah, Doc, good afternoon. I just joined, but I still have a question on standardization.
Please go ahead.
Right. So if you have a product, the same product,
yeah,
and you just change the language,
good,
on the label, and let's say export it to a French-speaking country, so you change the instructions to French.
Yes.
Would you term that as standardization or adaptation?
Literature argues that some people in literature would argue for standardization because the change that you made is very minute and does not affect the core formulation of the product. So it is only the language, but everything tastes the same. Everything else looks the same. So some will argue that it's standardization. I will say it's standardization.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Doc.
You're welcome, Michael.
Bye.
Okay. So like I was saying, adaptation implies changing various aspects of product and service to a considerable extent. So whereas some school of thought in the literature are saying with standardization, you are allowed a minute amount of variation, adaptation means you have varied so many different aspects of the product and the service, from the core all the way to the extended product, to a considerable extent, in order to meet the needs of consumers in foreign markets, considering their local differences. So with adaptation, you can change everything from the product formulation to accommodate local tastes, to the color of the packaging, to the color of the writing, to even the letters, to even the name that you give the product, because you want to make sure that all the various aspects of the product that you're trying to sell in the foreign market conform to the lifestyle, the practices, as well as all other idiosyncrasies that we can be able to identify in the foreign markets that we are trying to sell. So what are the arguments for adaptation? The main argument for adaptation is market segmentation. Remember, in one of our sessions, we talked about the importance of market segmentation and the firm being able to use the STP process to appropriately determine which market they can serve within their means in a profitable manner. So market segmentation is the main basis for adaptation. Using the philosophy of market segmentation alone, we know that definitely there are different segments that we can carve out of any market group. And we can be able to segment the market on so many different levels using so many complicated criteria, such that there's no way you can standardize the way you serve each of these different segments, given the multiplicity of criteria that we can use to segment them or categorize them. So market segmentation is the key argument for why adaptation is necessary in global marketing. The second thing is excellent local image. People in different cultures are sometimes known to exhibit ethnocentric tendencies. So you would want to put your product in a position where it will fit into their ethnocentric mindset and be acceptable by their standards. And that way you'll be able to develop a good local image for your product, which if you are able to do with every single foreign market that you are serving, would together sum up to be a huge positive image for the brand globally in all these markets. Another reason for adaptation here could be language and cultural differences. And that is why, Michael, I was saying that some people will say changing the language is a form of adaptation, and some people will say it is a form of standardization. But like we said, adaptation deals with various aspects being changed. So not just one minute aspect, but a plethora of aspects being changed at the same time to suit the foreign market. So adapting to cultural and local differences as well is one of the bases for the argument towards more adaptation as against standardization. Another key element why global marketers favor adaptation over standardization is the legal and regulatory factors that exist in various foreign markets. In our previous sessions, we've been able to establish that every foreign market has its unique idiosyncrasies, especially when it comes to various aspects of the global marketing environment, like their culture, the political environment, the legal environment, the economic environment. And because of that, we need to be able to take cognizance of all the various criteria that these different factors, be it legal or regulatory, expect us as global marketers to factor into our marketing mix to ensure that we conform. So a typical example is the left-hand drive syndrome that is popular in most countries. The same car that has been designed to serve a particular market will not be fit for driving in another market because perhaps that country is left-hand drive or right-hand drive. And as we all know, many Asian and European countries require drivers to drive on the left-hand side of the road. So if you go and put the steering wheel on that side of the road, you are causing problems, right? Please, is Ghana is right-hand drive, right?
Yes, most of them.
In Ghana?
Yeah.
In Ghana, we are right-hand drive.
No, we are left-hand drive.
No, no, right too. And if any right-hand drive.
Yeah, we are right-hand drive. So there's a
we are left-hand.
We are left-hand.
Right.
Are we left or right?
Left-hand.
We are left.
Right-hand.
Michael. Michael.
No, wait.
We are right-hand drive.
Are we left?
We are right-hand drive.
Our steering wheel is on the left.
Please.
We are right-hand drive.
We are right-hand drive.
We are right-hand drive.
Right side of the road. He is the right side of the road.
And you all drive. Are we safe? Are we safe? So
and if any fanan,
so we are right-hand drive.
That was when they were changing from
left to the right.
Left to the right.
Yes.
What?
Because of colonialism, we were initially left. So now we are right-hand drive. Right? Because now people import cars from Britain and they come and change the steering wheel from the right to the left. You didn't know? Or people have been doing it in Ghana.
Yes,
so you put the car and then they'll shift the position of the wheel.
Doc, you know the business.
Oh no, I have students who sell cars.
Oh yeah, they do it. But if you are vigilant, you see that this car steering has changed.
Yeah.
Doc.
And the moment you sit behind the steering wheel, you see that.
Yes.
Doc.
Yes, Fendi.
Please, it seems I'm a bit confused.
Yeah.
Concerning this left and right hand drive issue. Yeah. So are you saying that if we are left hand drive, it means we're on the left side of the road,
You use your left hand.
We're talking about the steering wheel.
No, let me explain. If you are a right-hand drive vehicle, you will drive on the left side of the road.
Good.
And if you are a left side vehicle, you drive on the right side of the road.
Yes.
So the vehicles that we drive in terms of steering are on the left.
Yes.
But we will drive on the right side. So that the driver would always be in the lane side of the road.
Use our right
Andy,
hand.
you need to bring your lenses.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I should do it.
Use your right hand.
Bring your lenses. You don't have to be driving on the road.
Gear, you use your right hand to take your gears and then your left hand drive.
It's okay. I asked Doc. It's okay.
Wendy, please, is it clear now?
He wasn't even clear enough, but I'll call you later. So
yes, please. Yes, please.
Doc, don't mind her.
Link up on the other side.
Oh, she will mind me.
You guys should stop the love affair here.
Okay, so now that we've clarified that, that's a typical example of how regulation can affect your global marketing issues. So imagine having to go through the problem of shifting the steering wheel from the left to the right just to be able to accommodate regulation. And that leads us to one of the biggest disadvantages of adaptation, which is the cost implication. You have
let me tell you a funny story on this left-hand drive.
Please go ahead.
I lived in the UK for 2.5 years. So when I was there, I was driving. So when I came back home, a friend came to pick me up. So when he came, I said, "Oh, you give me the car and the keys to drive."
Yes.
When we got to airport roundabout, then I turned around and started using the other lane for the oncoming vehicles.
That's an accident waiting to happen.
I'm telling you, the guy just
I knew it.
I'm sure you asked them why they were driving on the wrong side of the road.
On the road, exactly.
For a very long time, I was driving in the middle of the road because I was afraid of getting close to falling into the gutter.
Yeah.
When I went back to the UK, when I was driving, the same thing happened to me. So it's
bring your license. It's illegal.
It's what is illegal.
You didn't have a license when you were driving.
I think 2 months. No, it's more than 2 months ago. There is an American wife's diplomat who killed a cyclist in the UK because of wrong. What do you call it? Driving on the wrong side.
Wrong side of the road. Wow.
So you watch most of the UK routes because they know closer to Europe. Let's say France, people drive through and come in. They would always be indicating that if you are driving here, you're on the wrong side of the road. So go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very important.
But that's a good one, Sally. Thank you for sharing.
It wasn't easy.
So we see even the cost implications can extend beyond just the person selling the car. Can extend to cost implications to human life even, right? And that is why a lot of people argue against adaptation, but we can't do without adaptation, especially because of the basis of segmentation that we revolve all our marketing decisions and strategies around. So in that note, when it comes to standardization versus adaptation, there are 3 things we basically want to note. That heterogeneity among different countries will not allow us to use a standardized approach everywhere in its absolute form. It is virtually impossible. So standardization and adaptation should therefore not be an all or nothing proposition when it comes to global marketing mix strategies, because you can't use all of standardization and all of adaptation without managing to customize in some way or another to suit the unique idiosyncrasies of the various markets that you are trying to enter as a global marketer. So as a forward-looking firm, you have to be able to be proactive in the manner that you are willing and able to accomplish both techniques simultaneously, such that where the market calls for standardization, we go in with standardization. And where the market calls for adaptation, we go in with adaptation in any way, manner, or form or combination that we need to in order to make sure that we can efficiently and successfully serve all the foreign markets that we are looking to enter into as global marketers. So in that case, let's look at the 4 Ps and how standardization or adaptation can be manifested through the application of these various Ps in foreign markets. And like I mentioned earlier, today we'll be looking specifically at 2 of them. First, we'll look at product, and then we will go into price. Now, before we go into the product decisions in terms of adaptation and standardization, is there anything someone wants to bring to the fore before we proceed? Otherwise, we begin. Okay, so let's start with product decisions. Now, when we talk about product in marketing, we are referring to a good, service, or an idea with both tangible and intangible attributes that collectively create value for a buyer or user. Now, in terms of these 2 attributes, when we talk about tangible attributes, first of all, these are the attributes that we can assess in physical terms. So, for instance, tangible attributes may include the weight of the product, the dimensions of the product, the materials that have been used to design the product, to create its packaging, among others. All of these things are what we refer to as the tangible attributes of the product. And then when we come to intangible product attributes, we can talk about things like the product ownership, or the manufacturer's service commitment, or the customer service level that is offered, or the reputation of the brand, or perhaps the mystique surrounding that particular brand that the company is selling. All of these are intangible product attributes that can come into play when we are talking about standardization and adaptation of the product element of the marketing mix for global markets. So let's talk about the dimensions of the international product. In creating an acceptable product offer for foreign markets, we need to be able to examine the product in its totality. And when we talk about the product in its totality, we are referring to the fact that the product, as we see, is made up of various layers. And depending on whose conceptualization you are using, you can have anywhere from 3 to 5 layers of the product that we can peel off as marketers and either standardize or adopt the various layers to suit the customers in the foreign markets that we are looking to serve. But for our purposes, we will look at 3 main layers. And these layers include the core product, the product attributes, and the support services. Now, like I said, depending on the level of the product or the layer of the product that you're looking at, you will be able to implement standardization and adaptation to a certain degree. And based on the diagram that is before us, we can see that at the level of the core product, it is easier for us to present something more standardized than adaptive. However, as we go higher to subsequent levels of the product, standardization begins to become minimal and adaptation becomes more and more possible. So let's look at a typical example. At the core product benefits level, we can think about functional features and performance. So let's talk about a car, for instance. Let's use the Mercedes-Benz BMW examples. When we talk about performance, Mercedes-Benz and BMW have a standard level of performance everywhere in the world. True or false?
True.
In terms of functional features, they are the same everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
In terms of the image, it's the same everywhere in the world. The 2020 S-Class is the same 2020 S-Class you will see if it is in Nigeria or Ghana or the UK or the US. So the technology and the image and the perceived value is the same. So in that vein, can we say that it is standardized?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, madam.
And that is at the core product level. However, when we come to the product attributes level, we see that there is more wiggle room now for some form of adaptation. So in as much as the standard, the core product level is standardized, we can be able to adapt certain product attributes to suit different markets, such as brand name, for instance. In the past, certain cars were known by a particular name in one country, and by another name in another country. True or false?
Doc, there are some cars like that.
Good.
Currently.
Yes.
Right? Opel was Opel in Ghana, but it was Vauxhall in the UK.
Yes.
So that is one layer of adaptation that we can talk about when it comes to product attributes. In terms of size and color variants, there are certain colors of certain cars that you will not see in certain countries. Certain colors are only manufactured and sold to certain classes of clientele. Levels of adaptation could even come in at the level of packaging. In terms of country of origin, adaptation could come in. A company may decide to source their materials from China. And then when they are selling to Africa, they will write made in China on it. But when they are selling to the UK, they'll write made in the USA. And then in some small writing, they'll write parts manufactured in China. Because they know if the China is prominent, a lot of people will not buy it just because of that. But in Africa, we don't mind. So they can leave them made in China there. Right? So let's look at a typical example of this. For instance, we all know Oreos, right?
Yes, Doc.
Have you seen a lemon Oreo in Ghana
before? Yes, Doc.
Lemon Oreo, Fendi, are you sure?
No. Yes, Doc.
Okay. Where did you see it, Fendi?
Or is that koala?
There are some in American shops.
Koala and cantaloupe.
Lemon Oreo in Ghana. There's no lemon Oreo in Ghana.
I've not seen lemon Oreo in Ghana before. If you say koala, I may believe you because their clientele is not the local people. And then perhaps the American shops or something.
It's in koala, cantaloupe. They even have the peanut butter. They have the peanut butter. They have different flavors.
They have the green tea.
Because they have a different market segment.
That is Heba Oreo.
The green tea Oreo. I don't think that one was there. Fendi, did you see the green tea one?
No, for that, no.
So the green tea one is manufactured and sold exclusively in China and Japan. And then the lemon Oreo, the same, China and Japan. When you go to other countries too, there are certain flavors that are unique to them. In the US, for instance, they have the widest selection of Oreo flavors. They even have flavors named after cereal, flavors named after ice cream, flavors named after marshmallow. So many different flavors. But in Ghana here, the ones we are used to seeing are just the chocolate one. And then occasionally I've seen the pink one, the one with the pink filling. Right? That is a typical example of how attributes can change in terms of size and variance. Right? In another vein too, we all know Twix, right?
Yes, Doc.
Good. Doc. In certain parts of Europe, and still currently, Twix is called Radar. And some years back, they tried to change it and make it uniform all over the world and sell Twix everywhere. And because of that, the brand suffered a lot in countries like France because the French people could not just accept the name Twix on the product, even though it was the same formulation, the same taste, the same flavor, the same everything, but the name was just changed from Radar to Twix. And they lost market share in France. So recently, they have reintroduced the Radar back in France and the Netherlands in an attempt to salvage the brand image that they lost as a result of changing it from Radar to Twix. But that is a typical example of how adaptation can happen with regard to product attributes. The core product was still the same, the taste and everything was the same, but the moment they tried to standardize the name and make it Twix everywhere, they had a problem. And so even though the core product had to stay the same with the same taste and everything, they had to revert back to the old name that they were using in Europe to be able to make sure that they can be successful in that market with regard to selling their product.
Doc, please, can I ask a question?
Please go ahead, Mildred.
So what was the problem? Was the problem with the name or?
It was just the name.
Just the name. They didn't like it.
They didn't like it. They were used to calling it Radar.
Wow.
Hi, Doc.
Yes, Mawina.
I just want to clarify. Is it that with the Oreo lemon and the green chocolate, they feel like the Asians prefer that more, or?
Yes. You know, Asians are into all these herbs and citrus.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Okay.
So that is why. But we have people who import it into countries like Ghana. Like Fendi is saying, she has seen some of the other flavors in Kuala. And for someone who is an Oreo junkie, they'll buy it and taste it. But you realize that
they should do Oreo chicken to sell in Ghana.
Perhaps. But it has to be cheap because Oreo is also some kind of it's targeted at a certain class of people. It's a bit expensive. It's not your average biscuit.
Very, very expensive.
So even if they do Oreo chicken and it's still expensive, no, I'll buy.
Fendi, I'm sure she was window shopping. She didn't buy.
When I was James was asking me for a party, may you cry still be some Z.
Okay, all right. So that is it for the product attributes level, right? Now, a step higher when we go to the support services level, the level of adaptation becomes even more prominent, because then when you talk about support services, you are introducing a human element, which in itself introduces some level of variation. Regardless of what you do, when human beings are involved, it is very difficult for you to standardize service delivery. So at the support services level, the standardization becomes even more prominent, because, for instance, the level of installation service you will get in Ghana here if you bought an air condition from a company that does installation is different from the service you will get if you were perhaps in the US and you were buying it. The service delivery will be totally different. Even the kinds of guarantees that you get as a result of purchasing a particular product differ depending on the country that you're buying it in. The same goes for after sales service, repairs and maintenance, and sometimes spare parts. In Ghana here, people buy brand new cars, they buy brand new machines, and they do not have spare parts for them. They have to sometimes import from other countries. So that brings to the fore the issue of the variability of support services, which necessitates the concept of adaptation. And this once again drives home the issue of the inability of marketers to apply a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to deciding whether to standardize or adapt. It's about the marketer being flexible and knowing when to apply what when it comes to selling their product in the foreign market. So that brings us to the end of the discussion on the levels of the product and how it influences level of standardization or adaptation. Now let's talk specifically about product adaptation. And here we can discuss two types of adaptation. One being mandatory adaptation. And here with mandatory adaptation, we are using the term mandatory to refer to the level of adaptation being required, say, by law or for legal reasons. And thus, without that adaptation, your product either cannot or will not be allowed to enter a particular market for sale. And a typical example is when we talk about various electrical appliances. And again, in Africa, people will buy appliances from different countries that have all these modified electrical sockets and change them to the ones that we can use here. But technically, if you are selling an electrical appliance in a particular country, you need to be able to look at the different electrical voltages that are allowed in these countries to be able to design your product to meet those specifications. So for instance, a UK product is expected to have a different level of voltage capacity than a product from, say, Israel or Denmark. And you realize that there are also differences in terms of the various sockets that you find on these electronic appliances, as we can see from the diagram. So sometimes adaptation is non-negotiable. It is mandatory if you want to be able to successfully enter the foreign market and sell your products and services. And the same goes for all products that are being exported to foreign countries in different categories. In Ghana here, a lot of SMEs fail at exporting their products successfully, largely because of mandatory adaptation requirements that they are unable to meet. Because perhaps the products that they are exporting requires them to have some kind of labeling and disclose some kind of ingredients or some kind of product formulation or creation processes. And their inability to do that is what prevents them from being able to successfully sell their product in the foreign market. However, besides the mandatory adaptation, we have the optional adaptation where the product is adapted at the discretion of the marketer, right? So the marketer decides that, well, to be able to enhance the chances of my product succeeding in this foreign market, I am going to change this aspect of the product and change that aspect to make it stand out among the competition and be able to sell more. So we see it, for instance, with products like Oreo that we just discussed, products like the Twix radar situation that we just discussed, and then even higher level products that involve complex sorts of technology like petrol, where petroleum companies like ExxonMobil are known to modify the composition of their petrol to suit specific climates, depending on the country that they are selling their fuel in. So these are all examples of optional adaptation that a firm can implement to be able to stand out among the crowd and perhaps serve their customer base better than their competition. And these are the two main types of adaptation we can talk about when it comes to products. Now let's look at some practical examples of these adaptations. Now this is the typical Red Bull that we all know. In Ghana here, this is the Red Bull that we drink. True or false? Please, those who drink Red Bull, this is the one we drink here, right?
True.
Yes.
Good. And it's the same as the one that is drunk in North America and some other places. And the colors are red, silver, and blue. And the red here is a symbol of courage. The silver is a symbol of maturity. And the blue is a symbol of youth, spirituality, and peace. And in Ghana here, no one has a problem with these colors. Likewise, all the other countries that they are being used in, right? However, when Red Bull decided to go into China, they decided to go with this can. They decided to go with the gold, blue, and red design, with an emphasis on the gold and the red, because red in China was a symbol of good luck, and the gold was a symbol of wealth and happiness. So they decided to use these colors to design the Red Bull for the Chinese market instead of using the regular one. So you realize that in this case, Red Bull is using a combination of standardization and adaptation. True or false?
True.
Good. Where in some markets, they are selling a standardized version of Red Bull, like it's sold in North America and sold in New Zealand. And then in other markets, they are choosing to adapt to be able to suit the needs of that particular market. Now, this Red Bull was being sold in China for the first time until just recently, I think in 2017, when they decided to introduce a variation of this can that we all know in the form of Red Bull Extra. But they still sell the other one on the market. So I'm putting a question to the class now. Why do you think all of a sudden, after selling this particular one in China for so many years, they've been able to introduce a can that is similar to what we in the rest of the world know as Red Bull? What do you think is the reason for their ability to now introduce a can similar to what is being sold in the rest of the world?
Doc, I think it's the size of the can.
Are you sure?
Doc, I think now the Chinese are used to the product. They know the content. They know how it feels. They know what they get, the value they get when they take the product. So now the packaging or the bottling doesn't really matter.
Exactly. Yeah. Because they become used to it. And bear in mind that both of them are still being sold. Sally, please, your hand is up. You want to come in?
Yes, Doc.
No, it's the same thing as Kwame just said.
Okay, all right. So, like Kwame Akwa said, and like Saliu reiterated, they have been able to become used to the Red Bull taste and flavor. So, introducing the can that is being used elsewhere will not make much of a difference. Bearing in mind that the other can is also still on the market, right? So these are ways by which we can see that the firm is implementing a combination of adaptation and standardization using an incremental approach. True or false?
True.
Would you agree that the approach was also incremental?
Yes.
In what sense? In what sense was it incremental?
Yeah, because they waited for the customers to get used to the core product, which is the drink in itself. Yes. And the packaging really can transform as and when.
Exactly. Thank you, Salim. So do we see how the global marketing strategy can be straightforward yet complex at the same time? And it requires us to utilize all the various tools and techniques and theories and concepts that we have learned since the beginning of this course. Because as strategists, like I mentioned in one of our previous sessions, you need to know when to apply what. So this is a typical example of such a scenario. Okay. Let's look at another. Now this is Mattel and their famous blonde Barbie. Please, who owned one of these when they were a child? Did anyone here play with one of these?
Yes, Sally had one.
And for a long time, this was what we knew as Barbie, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But it was okay for the longest time when they were only operating in the United States and its territories. But the moment they started to expand and wanted to be able to become more successful with other customer segments, especially other races and communities like the Asians and the Latinos, right? And the Black Americans, they started having problems because they realized that the typical Barbie doll that they had was not all inclusive. The main ethos of the Barbie brand is about presenting the epitome of what a young woman is supposed to look like in her prime. And technically, as the years wore on, people started becoming more sensitized and body sensitive, such that they came to appreciate that not everybody will be this slim and this tall. So in that case, Barbie started having a problem because when you want to expand into other segments, where not every parent wants their children to think that this is the ideal body type, you begin to have issues. Yes. So they realized that the standardization approach was going to fail woefully. So they went back to the drawing board, came up with some strategy to introduce some form of adaptation. And in doing that, they came up with what they call We Are Barbie, where they decided to introduce different Barbie dolls that represent the different races, different body types, different body features. So they added different kinds of Barbie. We can see from this small diagram, they have the Barbie with vitiligo, a Barbie that is Asian, a Barbie that has braids, a Barbie that has dimples, Barbies with thick lips, Barbies with thin lips, Barbies with different skin tones, right? And they did not stop there. They went ahead to introduce Barbies of different sizes. They added a fairly heavier Barbie, a Barbie with very dark skin, some tall, some short, some tiny, just in an attempt to become more inclusive of the different races of human beings that we have around the world. They even went ahead to include disabled Barbie dolls that are sitting in wheelchairs, Barbie dolls that are amputees, Barbie dolls that have shaved their heads,
Wow.
right? Just to make the point that they are inclusive and consider every human being in any way or form they come from every race. And they didn't stop with the female Barbie dolls. They went ahead and started doing it with the guys as well. Because for the longest time, we only knew about Barbie's boyfriend, Ken, the blonde-haired, slim guy who is always by Barbie's side. But they also realized that men don't always come in one shape, size, and height. So they introduced a new set of Kens as well. So they have the black Ken with the haircut, the black Ken with the curly hair, the Ken with no macho, Ken with macho. Pardon?
I see Saliu in there.
Right? So these are all attempts at adaptation. Kwame Akwa, please come in.
Madam, please, apart from they trying to segment or let me say adapt, I can see another element of CSR in it, corporate social responsibility.
Go ahead.
Cost-related marketing, where they are trying to sensitize people about racism and then they need to lab the self and all those things.
Exactly. Good observation. And all that will contribute towards building their brand equity and giving them a good brand image. You see, so in putting in place some of these strategies, you can use some of your techniques to achieve more than one objective at a time, just like Kwame Akpa has helped us to identify right now. Right? In addition to CSR, they are also on the cause, like he said, of reducing racial discrimination and promoting body sensitivity. At least young men now know that they don't have to always look like Ken and be slim and all that. It's okay to have abs or not have abs. It's okay to have slim arms and be well built. It's okay to have curly hair. It's even okay to have a ponytail or long hair. Right? And the same for the girls.
Dog, it's okay to have one pack because for so long we've been harassed.
We don't see pot belly here. They are discriminating.
That is their mistake. They should add the pot belly people.
They have so many of the dolls. I couldn't bring all of them. They have about 50 different dolls in each range for both male and female Barbie dolls. So I
don't see any Akufo-Addo there.
Perhaps later on you can go online and see all the different dolls that they have, but there are a lot. There are a lot of them now, right? And it's all towards enhancing their level of adaptation. And like Kwame Akpa said, sensitizing people around the world with regard to specific causes like body sensitivity and racial discrimination. Okay, so that is it for the Barbie brand. Now, we can talk about, apart from product adaptation, which follows from standardization, where they either modify the product and then change some things to sell to the foreign market or sell it as is. There's an element called product invention, where they do not take the standardized form of what they're already selling to sell elsewhere or adapt it to suit the market. They just go back to the drawing board and design something totally new, specifically meant to serve the new market that they are going into. And this usually comes into play when they are going especially to less developed economies and countries like Africa, where they believe that the standards that have become acceptable in the more developed economies with regard to products, pricing, distribution, and promotion will not necessarily work, even if they adapted it to suit the African context. So they will go ahead and totally design a new product that is targeted specifically at these individual market segments in developing economies like Africa. So in the case of, for instance, fast-moving consumer goods, we can see that this level of product invention has been applied almost everywhere with regard to the FMCG industry. Previously in Ghana here, there was nothing like sachet ideal milk or sachet peak milk or sachet nido. When you are going to buy nido, you either buy it in the tin or you forget. Or our Ghanaian entrepreneurs became innovative and they'll buy the tin and they'll tie it in those small rabbits. Who has bought some before? When I was a child, I used to buy it in my grandmother's day.
Yeah.
So tie 20 pesos, 20 pesos, 10 pesos.
Yes.
They'll do it for everything, including Cerelac, Milo, sugar.
Exactly.
Right? But now the corporations have seen that these markets are a segment that we are missing out on. So why don't we invent something specifically to address this problem that they are having? And then the FMCG industry became flooded with all these sachet Milo, sachet Nido, sachet coffee, sachet sugar, all these sachet versions of these as a result of our innovative entrepreneurs in Africa. And when they get up, they say Africans are not great. So this is a typical example of product invention and how it specifically suits a particular kind of market and can help a firm to target a largely ignored niche in the marketplace that can be a potential source of huge amounts of profits and revenue. And believe you me, by introducing these new kinds of sachet products in the FMCG industry that we are talking about, they have been able to target a lot of the segments in the rural areas that were hitherto ignored, because it was only the people in the cities who could quote unquote, afford all these large sizes. But now with the smaller sizes and the lack of electricity in the village to store that tin of milk that you open that if you do not refrigerate will go bad, the sachet can help serve all these people who will just use it in one go and do not have to worry about refrigeration. Right? So that is a typical example of product invention and how firms can use it to enter foreign markets. Okay. Now let's look at some practical examples of product invention. Anne, please come in.
Okay, I think we should go to the examples and then I'll see if I'm clear with that, please.
Okay, all right. So let's look at a typical example. For the longest time, I always used to feel insulted when I see textbooks and they have international edition in it. That was when I was in school. Until I started doing my master's and I realized the reason why the international editions had to be designed. Now, a number of these books originally are written for use in schools in developed countries. So you realize that if the book is written by an American author, the person would largely be using only examples that American people can appreciate. The same goes for if the author is perhaps from a European country. However, we in the developing countries also rely on these same texts to teach our students to keep in line with global education standards. So the publishers realize that there's the need to commission international versions of these textbooks that will contain more inclusive versions of examples and concepts that will be better applied in the context of these other international countries where the authors do not necessarily come from. So the introduction of international editions of the various popular textbooks that we use is a typical example of product invention. It didn't used to be like that before. But they realized that they had to invent something to satisfy their educational needs specifically of students in foreign countries that were not necessarily privy to the idiosyncrasies in the market for which the original text was developed. That's one example. A second example is like we just discussed, the introduction of all these sachet versions of all the FMCG consumables that we have, from Cerelac to milk to Milo. These days, almost every beverage that we can think about for breakfast has a sachet version. And there are some products that were even introduced in sachet version, and today do not even have tin versions. Does anyone know an example? There's a very popular one in Ghana. They have marketed it from day one as a product for the masses, and it only comes in sachet form.
This way.
This way. And they have their clientele. They have their market segment that they sell. They are not intimidated by all these people who produce cans. No. They are just for the sachet, and it sells like something. Right? So these are typical ways in which product invention can be used to break into the local market. Okay. Anne, are you okay? Your question has been answered.
Yes, but Doc,
yeah.
Okay, I think I'll speak from I'm biased towards cosmetics, so I'll speak from that side. So the brand CeraVe, they are in America, and then they are in the UK and Ireland too as well.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking for I sell cosmetics, so I buy from either the UK and then the US. Now from the US, you will get the CeraVe for normal to maybe oily skin.
Yeah.
And then if I'm going to buy from the UK, you will never get from for normal to oily skin. It's always for dry to very dry skin. I assume because of Ireland, so then because of the weather and all. That's what I just assumed some time back.
Good.
But then it's also with the sizes. I just can't seem to wrap my head around the fact that in the UK and Ireland, they have the small sizes. That's about 8 fluid ounces. And then when you go to the US, they have the 16 fluid ounces and then bigger than that.
Good.
So I keep wondering, so is this product adaptation or product invention?
Can I tell you something? Remember when we're talking about product adaptation, we mentioned something called left-hand syndrome.
Yes.
There's another thing called American syndrome.
Right.
Everything in America has to be what?
Big.
Big. The big size makes it superior.
Yes.
So that is why you are experiencing what you're experiencing with the UK and the American one. So even if they do small sizes, they pass them off as samples.
No. So they are like there's the, I don't know if I have like the 2 bottles here, so I can actually show them to you, the ones that I got from America and the one that I got from.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, in America, even if they have the smaller sizes, they will not stock them like on shelves for sale.
No, they will.
They'll rather give them out as samples.
Yes.
Or send them to influencers to test out. Yes. Because of the American syndrome.
Wow. And also, you mentioned, I think the name has skipped me, but then if you go to Neutrogena as well.
Yeah.
So Neutrogena has, there's the pink grapefruit cleanser that is very common in Ghana here. Okay?
Yes.
And we selling that. I stocked some from the UK. Now my mistake was when I was getting them, I just looked at the name and yes, it's pink grapefruit. So okay, fine, let me just buy them. Then it got here and the bottle and everything was different. The bottling and then the branding and everything. Yeah. So then, to myself, like I was surprised, but I knew that okay, fine. I don't stock like knockoffs or anything. So I knew that it's just for the, yes. And then I researched more and I realized okay, so that's what they stock, and also that's also for Neutrogena, UK, and Ireland.
Yeah.
The issue with it in Ghana here is that I got a number of people. I posted the same product, and then people said no, they don't want that one. They want the one that they know.
Yeah.
Because they are used to that one, and they ended up asking me that, am I sure it's not a fake product?
Exactly.
So I don't know with the brands. I don't understand why the bottling was different.
Good.
And then
so
I saw the Red Bull. So yes.
The problem is the product was not designed for the Ghanaian market.
Yes, that's
it was designed for the UK market.
Mm-hmm.
So this should teach like entrepreneurs like you a valuable lesson that when you are importing, you need to think about importing from sources where the customer base you are targeting are familiar with.
Yes, and they are used to. Yes.
They are used to.
Yes.
Otherwise, you run into the problem that you have.
Yes.
You see.
I don't know if we've gone to pricing yet, but then I had to step out, so I just go back and I don't know if you've
we're not done pricing. We are still on the product.
Okay, so then I think I'll come in when it gets to pricing too.
Sure. But thank you, Anne, for sharing.
Thank you too.
Yeah. So you see, based on the little she has told us, because Ghanaians are now used to the American version of the Neutrogena grapefruit, in case Neutrogena decides to set up an office in Ghana and sell their product, they are better off standardizing and bringing the same one they've been selling in the US to come and sell in Ghana. And that in itself points towards a standardization approach, because that's what the people know. And it will not help them if they adapt the product in any kind of way. So thank you, Anne, for sharing. All right. Now, still on the product, the issue of the product, we are talking about branding and packaging decisions. And again, here we can decide to either adapt or standardize, right? So let's go into it. Now, what is the purpose of branding? Branding is basically to be able to help us to, one, distinguish the company's offering and differentiate one product from its competitors. And then to also identify your product and create awareness for it among your prospective clientele. It also helps to be able to guarantee a certain level of quality and satisfaction. Remember, Anne just mentioned that as soon as the branding of the product changed, the customers began to question the quality of the one that she imported from the UK, even though it was the same product, right? So that in essence tells us the power of branding and how it's able to promote quality and satisfaction. It also helps to be able to promote the product, because once again, using Anne's example, people were used to seeing the American version of the product, and that is how it had been marketed to them. So if it did not look like the one from the US, you were not going to buy it, right? And these are, in a nutshell, some of the main purposes why marketers brand their products. And in branding the product, there are so many different branding alternatives that you can have, and let's just look at 4 of them. The first one we can look at is the manufacturer's own brand. And here, when it is the manufacturer's own brand, It first of all enhances the ability of the manufacturer to get a better price. Because once the manufacturer's name is on it, people know what to expect. And therefore, even if the price changes slightly, because of the value they know they are getting, they will not mind. Hence, the high price and elasticity. And because they know the manufacturer and what to expect from the manufacturer, they are loyal to the brand. And it gives the manufacturer a higher bargaining power and control of their distribution when it comes to selling to their customers. However, it is difficult for a smaller manufacturer who has an unknown brand to achieve the advantages of using the manufacturer's own brand technique towards branding. Because people do not know the brand, they have not come to expect a certain level of quality from it, and therefore it makes it difficult for them to sell the product to the prospective customer. And as such, they will need a significant amount of promotion to actively convince the customer that their product is of good quality and deserves to be given a chance. Alternatively, the branding approach that the firm can adopt is that of a single market and a single brand. And here it is about the firm designing one brand and selling it to the world as one market. So everywhere you go in the world, you see the same brand as it looks with no differences. And the advantages of this is that it enhances marketing efficiency. It helps the firm to focus its marketing, and it eliminates brand confusion, right? Like Anne is experiencing with the different types of Neutrogena, grapefruit, even though they are the same product, because of the different kinds of branding, there's confusion. However, in the event that it is properly done and there's a single brand that the single markets use, it is good for the brand's reputation and could lead to what we call the halo effect. Now, what we say when it comes to the halo effect is that consumers develop a kind of favoritism and bias towards all the products that are produced by a particular brand maker. So if they know the brand Neutrogena and they are used to the kind of products that it produces, being that it was one brand that they were manufacturing before, it is very easy for the manufacturer to produce alternative products within the line, and they will be easily accepted by the brand. Good. Chief Tanner says an example of a single market is the Adidas Stan Smith shoe. That's a good example as well, right? So if Adidas introduces any other type of shoe, people will love it because they have the good reputation of Adidas in mind. However, with the single market, single brand technique comes some advantages, including the existing brand image being harmed when there's a trading up or down. The moment something goes wrong that affects the name, it influences every subsequent product that is introduced in the line. And if you have just one brand for one market, you have limited shelf space, a problem that is solved by the next technique that we are going to talk about, which is single market, multiple brands. And this has been excellently introduced by brands like Nestle and Unilever, where they have multiple brands sometimes in the same product category. And this helps them to be able to satisfy various market segments needs and also have a competitive spirit, even among themselves as an organization, right? And it also helps them to gain more retail shelf space and does not harm their existing brand image. Because everybody knows Unilever manufactures Omo and Sunlight. If anything happens to Sunlight now, it will not necessarily affect Omo. Because Omo is a brand. Yes.
Close Up and Pepsodent.
Close Up and Pepsodent, thank you. A typical one as well. So if anything happens to the Close Up brand, it doesn't affect Pepsodent because Pepsodent is its own brand, right? However, with this technique comes increased marketing costs. You have to spend separate money to market Omo, separate money to market Close Up, separate money to market Pepsodent, separate money to market Sunlight. And it will also lead to high inventory costs because you have to stock adequate amounts of each of these different brands that you are marketing. And you lose some amount of economies of scale because you will not be able to use the same resources to produce more of a particular product because you have different kinds of brands. Alternatively, yes, Sally.
Doc, on the Unilever example, could that be the reason why they seem to be struggling in the past couple of years?
Yeah.
Especially in Ghana.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the main reasons why they're struggling. They've spread themselves a bit thin, and they're incurring a huge amount of costs. So the moment that sales do not go well, they will feel it because the cost implications are huge. So yes, yeah, you're right, Salim. So that is the downside of the strategy that they adopted. It has worked for them for a number of years, and it's still working in certain markets. But unfortunately, in Ghana here, it seems they are struggling at the moment. Let's see where they go with their strategy formulation to see if they can properly recover, right? And then last, we can talk about multiple markets with local brands. So here it means you are designing a different brand for a different market. So all your markets have different brands that satisfy each of them. Again, just like single markets, multiple brands, it comes with high marketing and inventory costs and loss of economies of scale. And ultimately, you have a diffused image because you have a different face in every market, which makes it difficult for consistency and to be able to build a loyal customer base. So that is it for branding issues when it comes to the global marketing mix. Now let's talk about packaging. Packaging, again, is an integral element of product-related decisions when it comes to global marketing, because we think about packaging when we are talking about the essence of the core product and protecting its integrity. So if the packaging is not done right, the core product could end up getting damaged. And once the core product is damaged, it loses its ability to satisfy the customer's needs. So packaging must be designed such that it is able to protect the product that is contained within it throughout all the stages that it goes through, from shipping to retail, all the way to the point of consumption where the consumer actually finally consumes the product contained within. And in recent times, when we talk about packaging on a global scale, eco-packaging has been gaining a lot of traction because we have been dealing with issues of sustainability all over the world. And marketers are being forced to be able to think of sustainable ways of coming up with packaging as well as product designs that will help to conserve the environment through creating more recyclable and biodegradable packaging materials, right? At the same time, too, packaging also serves as communication cues because people are not always able to look at the contents of a package. So all that they have to learn about the content of a package and whether or not it is best suited to satisfy their needs is from the packaging of the product. So we have to make sure that as marketers, we make sure that the communication that we put on our packaging is up to par, right? So let's look at some examples. This particular Persil laundry liquid was designed specifically for the Saudi Arabian market, and it was called Persil Abaya. Now, Abaya is the black apparel that the women often wear in Saudi Arabia. And we all know the way black fabric behaves, especially when you wash it with detergent that is too strong. So they specifically designed this Persil and packaged this such that anyone who sees it in that market knows that it is designed specifically for them. So they named it Persil Abaya to point towards the fact that it is specifically designed for use in washing the abaya. And we can see from the packaging that they have a picture of a woman wearing the abaya. And the name Persil Abaya is written in, is it Arabic? I think so, yes, on the package. But they realized that it was so successful that they wanted to introduce the same product in Europe. But they couldn't introduce it the same way with the abaya because people in Europe don't wear abaya, do they? So they decided to introduce it in Europe under a different name with a different kind of packaging. So even though the Persil that they introduced in Europe was the same formulation as the one they introduced in Saudi Arabia, on the packaging, they put a different kind of woman in a black attire that is usually worn by women in Europe. And they named it Persil Dark and Black Care. So you realize that by the packaging alone, they've been able to communicate a lot of things, especially about the specific market segment that the product is targeting. And that is a typical example of how packaging can be adapted when it comes to global marketing. Another example is these two products. One is called Axe and the other one is called Lynx, but they are both one and the same product, the same formulation, the same smell. The only difference is that one is sold in a different market and the other is sold in another market. So when you go to the UK and Ireland and Australia and China, you will expect to see Lynx. You will never see Axe there. But when you go to other countries, apart from these ones that I've mentioned, you will see Axe. And there's one simple reason for it. they had to adapt based on legal regulation, because the name acts had already been trademarked in the United Kingdom, Ireland, Australia, and China. So there was no way they could sell a product under the name acts in those markets. They will be infringing the laws. So they had to find an interesting name. That is why they decided to use the name links. So this is another typical example of how packaging can be adopted. However, the contents are virtually the same. No difference. And you see that the adaptation here is just in relation to the name. The design on the bottle is the same. The shape of the bottle is even the same. Right? Even the font that was used is largely the same. So that is another example of packaging adaptation. Now, a typical example of packaging adaptation, again, in the FMCG industry is when we talk about Cocoa Pops. Please, we know about Cocoa Pops, right? Has anyone bought Cocoa Pops for their kids here before?
Yes, please.
Yes.
So when we think of Cocoa Pops, you think about the yellow box with the monkey and everything. Yeah. But when it comes to its sale in foreign markets, it's not the same as the one we know in Ghana. Now in Ghana here, we know the one that says Cocoa Pops, which is similar to what is sold in the UK and in Denmark. But when you go to America, it's not called Cocoa Pops. It's called Cocoa Krispies. Now, please, those who buy the Cocoa Pops in Ghana, what animal is on the box?
Monkey.
Monkey. But in the US, their Cocoa Krispies has snap, crackle, and pop on it. In Ghana here, what cereal has this one on it?
Rice Krispies.
Rice Krispies. You see, but for the American market, this is how they have to design it to be able to get their attention and get them to buy. When you go to Mexico and Costa Rica, they call it Choco Krispies, and you will never guess the animal they have on the box. An elephant. Right? And this is for the Latino market, Mexico and Costa Rica. Right? But when you come to the UK and Denmark and us, this is what we have, Cocoa Pops, the famous one that we all know. So these are typical examples of adaptation, right? Even though the taste may essentially be the same, the one in the US is designed in the shape of Krispies, whereas the one in Ghana is a larger shape and size, right? So this is another example of adaptation in terms of packaging, even though the contents are largely the same. Next, we can talk about labeling, which is largely a component of packaging. And with global marketing, the main issue that comes up when we talk about labeling is multi-language labeling, because we know that there are different languages that are spoken in different parts of the world. Victor, please come in.
Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon.
About the packaging, I like how he explained the fact that it has to protect the product from start to finish when it gets to the consumer.
Yes,
I bought a golden tree chocolate once in traffic.
Yeah.
And they had put it in this little plastic bags that I don't know where they go, but it fit perfectly into it. So it seemed like it came with a product.
Yeah.
Or it's something meant for the product.
Yes.
But what I realized was that when I opened it, it was harder than normal. It was like the chocomilo that had been exposed to air.
Oh my God.
Then I realized that maybe Golden Tree will have to come in to ensure that the people selling on the streets don't put them in those plastic bags that will damage the product.
I agree.
This was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but even today, I'm sure people are selling on the streets. Exactly. So the product doesn't get to the consumer the way Golden Tree would have, loved it to be. So would it now be the responsibility of the producer to ensure that even the hawkers on the streets, ensure the protection of the product, the core product itself?
Yeah. To a large extent, depending on how far the producer wants to take it. Because perhaps this may not even be the doing of the producer. Perhaps it's one of the retailers who are selling on their behalf. So
exactly.
The retailer who is doing this, then perhaps it's still within their control. But if it is not controlled by a retailer and it's just the hawkers who buy in boxes and decide to sell it this way, then unless they can get some kind of law to limit this activity.
Or education at least.
Or education, the people will still continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing, Victor.
Thank you.
Okay. So like I was saying with regards to labeling, the multi-language labeling issue comes up every time we talk about labeling global marketing, because we need to make sure that the labels reflect the contents in a form and a manner that the consumer can understand and appreciate. So labels often have to contain all the information that is needed to be in the label, including care instructions, ingredients, all done in a language that the consumer can easily understand. And for that reason, you have to make sure that the labeling of your products conform to all the country and region specific regulations, in addition to cultural idiosyncrasies and language idiosyncrasies as well, to make sure that the labels are telling the people what they need to know to be able to effectively consume the product that you're selling them, right? So for instance, KFC as we know it in different parts of the world is called KFC. But in Quebec, which is a part of Canada, KFC is known as PFK. And PFK in French is pronounced Poulet Frit Kentucky or Kentucky, something like that. Kentucky. Good. And that is.
Let the French students say.
Please, French students, help us. Please pronounce it for us.
Fendi is one of them.
Poulet Frit Kentucky.
Poulet.
Poulet. And that is because the people in Quebec are largely French-speaking people. So the rules in the place says that if you are introducing a product there, it has to have a name that is in French, so that the people can easily wrap their minds around it and know if it is wholesome for their consumption or not. So that is a typical example of how labeling can change depending on the market you are operating in and the regulations that govern that market, right? Another thing too we can talk about is regards to the packaging of various FMCG goods like Coca-Cola. This is Coca-Cola as it is sold in Japan. And you can see that it does not have the usual bottle cork that we are used to. It's a screw top that is sealed, right? And this is for the Japanese market. And you can see that the labeling has also been done with some Japanese lettering. Please, can we see that? All to be able to satisfy the language requirements of the various contexts. This is Coca-Cola from Russia. And you can see that the can even has Russia written on it. And it's called Coca-Cola. If you say Coca-Cola in Ghana here, someone would think that you are or you are no L name. But it is actually.
I think we need this here.
It is actually the name of the drink in the country. The official name of the drink is Coca-Cola in Russia. And similarly, we can see the same thing too. This is Coca-Cola in China. All the writing is in Chinese. Not a single word of English.
Our Chinese students will help us.
Oh, yeah.
Lucy.
Evans. Oh, we can read. Why not? That's that I've lost my voice, so let's speak English.
Evans, why are you calling Lucy? You are also a Chinese student.
Even if we don't know anything, the color alone is Coca-Cola.
The ping, you know.
Come again.
So,
I said it's in ping, so I can't read it. They should. This is not a ping.
No, this is the plego. This is in the plego.
Aha! So you see, you know the plego. Now read the ping for us. Disgrace us.
Okay, so that's by the way, and that brings us to the end of product decisions. Now let's briefly talk about pricing decisions.
Doc.
Yes.
And please, I wanted to find out the way these products appear different in different countries.
Yeah.
When they are internationalizing into that country, are they supposed to do some advertisements to say that we are the same people? Probably some people have seen it elsewhere. For instance, the Quebec example.
Yeah. So when we get to,
if not,
so you realize that in the Quebec example, the name is different, but Colonel Sanders' face is still there.
Okay, but with the influx of a lot of fake things from, say, China or something, then people may think, oh, this is not it. It's fake, or it's an imitation or something. Won't it affect the company too?
Yes. So it's up to you in your promotional strategies to let people know that it is still you, right? And when we get to promotion, we'll see different ways by which firms are able to pull this off without losing aspects of their brand image.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So for pricing decisions, we are talking about the fact that price in general is the amount of money expected, required, or given in exchange for something, right? So when we are talking about pricing, we are looking at the money that has to exchange hands for the firm to be able to achieve its global marketing objectives with regard to selling a particular product or service. Now, price is the only area of the global marketing mix where policy can be changed rapidly without large direct cost implications. Because depending on the nature of a number of factors, which we will identify very soon, a price can be the same can be a particular amount today, and tomorrow will be a different amount without any significant cost implications. And also the fact that overseas consumers are often sensitive to price changes. It is very dangerous for marketers to resort to price actions that are quick to fix the problems that they are having in global marketing rather than fixing the root cause problem. And this is largely because, like I said, prices can be rapidly changed without any direct cost implications. So for instance, if people stop buying a product or the sales in the product drop, rather than thinking of perhaps whether the reason could have been the product formulation or the promotion of the product, global marketers may be tempted to change the price element to make it less, given that price can be rapidly changed, rather than thinking about the root cause of the problem. So in as much as the benefit of the pricing element is its ability to metamorphose quickly and very often, it is very difficult for global marketers to restrain themselves from using it as a quick fix for global marketing issues, rather than confronting the other elements of the marketing mix that are contributing to the problem at the core. So by way of pricing decisions when it comes to global marketing, we are expecting global marketers to develop pricing objectives and strategies that will help them to be able to achieve their global marketing objectives. And sometimes, as we will learn very soon, the objective is not always to make profit in the short term or in the long term. There may be a number of other objectives, such as building market share, for which the pricing strategy of the global marketer must directly respond to. So let's go ahead and talk a bit about the different pricing strategies that can be used. We will discuss 4 today, namely penetration pricing, market skimming, captive pricing, and then market pricing. So we'll take them one after the other. Let's start with penetration pricing. So with penetration pricing, the global marketer uses price as a competitive weapon, where they are using the lowest price at which they could possibly sell the product in the market to be able to build their market share. And with this particular strategy, they can be able to saturate the market quickly before any imitators come in to try and copy what it is that they are doing, because it is at a price where almost everybody in their target market segment can afford, and therefore contributes significantly towards helping them build market share faster than if they were deciding to sell it at a higher price, which will limit the number of people who could possibly afford the product and buy it. So in essence, penetration pricing often means that the product may be sold at a loss for a certain length of time. Because like I said, the objectives of pricing in global marketing is not always to make the highest amount of profit in the shortest possible period of time. Sometimes it's about using it as a tool to enhance your market share and build yourself as a competitive force in the particular sector or industry or market segment that you are selling to. So if it means running at a loss for a certain period of time, to be able to gain that level of market share and become the market leader, the firm would willingly do it and postpone their profit earning abilities to the latter part of their global marketing strategy, where they would have gained the market share and now have the gravitas to charge whatever price it is that they believe can make them achieve their revenue targets or return on investment, right? Now, because of the nature of this strategy and the possibility of earning losses in the initial stages and sometimes for a prolonged period of time, it is very unlikely that a first-time exporter who is now sending their product to a foreign market may use a penetration pricing strategy, because they do not have the gravitas and the amount of resources to be able to support such a strategy. It is more suited towards relatively more established firms and corporations who have a significant amount of resources and investments, who can afford to make loss in the short term to be able to make a profit in the long term. So that is it for penetration pricing. Next, we can talk about market skimming. And this is like the opposite of penetration pricing, where the strategy is to deliberately sell the product at a premium price to be able to skim off the best amount of profit from the market before competitors come in and start copying you and imitating what you are doing. And this strategy is frequently used by companies who seek to have a competitive advantage and differentiate themselves from their competition, as well as position their product as a luxury product. And we see this often with popular brands like the Apple brand. Irene, your hand just went up. Irene?
Doc, sorry. When you were talking about the market skimming, you're giving an example. So if I wanted to give an example in Ghana.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So I wanted to make reference to Pistis in Ghana, the fashion designer Pistis.
Good.
How they decided to differentiate themselves in terms of design and pricing for a certain particular kind of market.
Exactly. I even heard they don't quote their prices in cedis, only in dollars.
Yes, it's in dollars, and every modification comes at an extra cost in USD.
My God. So if you don't like the hand, or you want them to change it,
or if the details they did is not enough for you and you want them to add more details, it comes at a cost. Even if on the day of the event, if you want them to come and fit the dress for you, like come and wear it for you, it comes at an extra cost.
My God. Thank you for sharing.
Don't worry, we'll pay.
We give God all the glory that you can afford to.
Corona wedding. Wedding would do.
Thank you for sharing, Irene. But that's a typical example of market skimming. And right now, there are so many of them that they can't afford to use that skimming strategy anymore, but they are still using it.
Yes, there are a lot of designers who design outfits like Pistis, but Pistis still maintains the price and actually increases it every year.
Exactly, because they have been able to use the market skimming strategy to position themselves. So that's a good example, Irene. Thank you for sharing. Right?
You're welcome, Doc.
Yehoda, please come in.
Doc, so I wanted to find out if you deliberately price your product at a very low price to penetrate the market, won't consumers see your product as inferior to your competitors' product? And then, assuming you are able to use this price strategy to win a larger market share, and then now you want to increase your price, how are you going to do it? Like, how are you just going to suddenly change your price? The same products that you are offering, how are you just going to jump the price from low to high? Are the customers going to be willing to pay a high price for the same product?
Okay, so let me answer the first one first. You said if you sell your product at a very low price?
Yes.
How wouldn't that affect?
Yes, I'm saying that if you price it at a low price, people will think that it's inferior. So maybe they wouldn't want to associate themselves with your product.
That strategy is that you are selling it at a low price, but not at such a low price that it looks cheap.
Okay.
So you are thinking low price, but affordable low price, not rock bottom low price.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Okay. Yes.
So it should be low such that people will not be too scared to approach it and buy it to test it out.
Okay.
And sometimes you know that with regards to the way marketers price their products, if they price it even at the affordable level, they could be missing out on a significant amount of profit.
Yes.
So when we say pricing it at a low price, we are talking in terms of affordability and not rock bottom prices that may connote inferiority.
Okay.
And then the second one, regarding
yeah.
increasing the price. Marketers have very creative ways of increasing the prices of items. Sometimes they may do it by introducing some small product modification and then they'll increase the price.
Okay.
Or they'll introduce a different variant of the product and then make their profits from that angle. They decide that they'll sell. Before, for a very long time, Coca-Cola was only available in 300 or 300 bottles. Do you remember?
No, I wasn't born then.
In Ghana here, Coca-Cola
okay,
was
it's true.
Yes, 330 mils.
Good. Then all of a sudden, they had all these different sizes. 1.5 liter,
1 liter,
500, 1 liter, all these different liters. Some was in glass bottles, some was, and they all came at different prices.
Yes, that's true.
Good. So that is the creative ways by which marketers try to regain lost profits or enhance their market share.
Okay.
Because they started with the penetration pricing only 330 mil for like, it was 60 pesos at some point. Was it 60 pesos or 50 pesos? Then it came to 1 cedi per.
Yeah.
So by then they had been able to convince the market and gain the market share. Then they introduced all these different and some of the different bottles at some point only came out during Christmas time. So I remember some years back, you will only see the 1 liter glass bottle during Christmas.
Yes.
Good. These are all creative ways by which marketers can increase price and consumers will not know.
Okay. Thank you.
ShopRite brought this cereal, is it Choco Pop or something, and they were selling it as low as 5 cedis, a box of cereal.
Yeah.
And for months, people were buying, you not even get it on the shelf. After went on, they increased it a bit, you get it like about 8 cedis, and then the price started going up till it reached 20 something cedis. I think the level that at which they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Around the consumers were already hooked and they have acquired the taste for the product, so they were still buying.
Good. That's another very good example. Thank you, Lucy. Irene, what's your hand up?
No, Doc. Then I think maybe it's from the first
previous one. Okay. So Yehuda, are you okay now?
Yes, Doc. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. So, for instance, a typical way of market scheming is of knowing when market scheming is appropriate is by using the product life cycle. And as marketers, we always say market scheming is appropriate when the product is in its growth stages, right? And competition is increasing. You cut prices. But when you have introduced the product fresh and there are limited consumers and there's limited competition, that is when you introduce the market scheming approach. Because at the introduction stage, your sales are low, but then you are trying to send the message that this is not a product for everybody. It's a product for a niche group of people, a select group of people. So by scheming at the introduction stage, all the people who like all these niche kind of products, who like to consume all these luxury products that not everyone can afford, will jump onto the bandwagon and will pay whatever price that you ask. So by the time you get to the growth stage where more people have started to come into the market and are offering a similar thing to what you are offering, you would have already captured your clientele using your strategy at the price point that you want your product to be bought at. So regardless of what happens, like we just learned about in the Pistis example, with the influx of all these new designers, Pistis still maintains their market leadership. So that is one of the benefits of the market scheming approach, that even where at the growth stage where more competitors are coming in, you can decide not to cut your prices, say keep your prices where they are. And because of the approach that you use, you will still have your clientele who will still patronize your products and services, regardless of how much you are charging them. And that is how the product cycle, to a large extent, helps us to know when market scheming is plausible and when it is not. Now, another interesting pricing technique that marketers have used for decades and are still using is the captive pricing technique. And the captive pricing technique is where we have two types of products known as the core product and the accessory product, or the captive product. Now, with regard to captive pricing, the marketer uses the core product to capture the audience to be able to continue and to be able to initially purchase and continue purchasing another product, which is known as the captive product or the accessory product. And because of that, this technique is also known as companion products or razor and blades pricing. Now, a typical example of this is when you buy a Gillette razor, the ones that have the replaceable razors. You realize that the razor itself is very cheap, but the replacement or refill razors are very expensive. So in this case, we will refer to the original razor holder as the core product. And the replaceable blades that we have to keep buying and using with the razor holder is what we call the accessory or captive product. So the Gillette company has used the razor holder to be able to bait you into becoming captive to the replaceable razors that you have to buy to be filling it all the time. Another example is video game consoles and video games. The consoles themselves do not cost so much, to the point where records show that console designers like Sony and Microsoft, who manufacture the Xbox and Nintendo, have experienced significant losses with regard to the manufacture and sale of the game consoles. However, they are known to be making astronomical sales and profits through the software that is sold to be used with the console. So you have to be able to buy all the different video games. So any video game that comes out, you have to buy a new one to be able to use with the console. Chitano says the glucometer device, exactly, another example of captive pricing. The device itself is cheap, but the refill, what do they call it? Is it swabs or that you have to use to take the sample to test are very expensive. So good example, Chief Tano, the glucometer device is another one. The device itself is the core product. However, they use the refills that you have to buy to be able to test the blood samples, to be able to captivate you into using it. So that's another good example. Just like the video.
Madam, please, can you say SIM card to one of the example? Because the SIM card is just one CD, but then the data and the credit you buy.
Thank you. That's another typical example.
Salute SIM card. And salute stable net.
Yeah, another typical example. You can also talk about printers and cartridges. Yes, Salute, go ahead.
No, I was saying to Kwame Akwa that it's very correct because the cost of the device itself is way more than what the initial payment that you pay for the device.
That's true. That's true. That's true. So that is a very, very, very good example. Right? We can also talk about printers and ink cartridges. Right? Canon printers are so cheap, but the ink cartridge is another story.
Very expensive.
Right? HP introduced some level of affordability, but still the cartridges are very expensive as compared to the device itself. And then these new coffee makers that have been introduced by Nescafe and others that you can use to make instant coffee. The machines themselves are very cheap, but the pots that you put inside to make the coffee are very expensive. And they are designed such that you cannot use any other pot with the device. No. So if you have not been able to buy the refill, the device will be there, useless.
Doc, please let me give an example of some of these printers outside.
Please go ahead.
Let's say an Epson printer can sell for about, let's say, £40.
Yes.
Right. When you buy it, it has the toner and everything. Then when it finishes, you have to buy another toner. The toner, the black and white and the color is costing you about 35.
Thank you.
Eventually, what you tend to do is you keep on buying new printers because it doesn't make sense.
Because you think it's cheaper to buy a whole new printer than to exactly. You see? And these are all ways by which we marketers are making our profits. Right? These are some of the creative strategies we've been using. And so they always say marketers never give out anything for free. So even when they tell you buy one, get one free, think twice.
Not free.
Buy one, get a second one 50% off. Think twice. There's a catch.
DSTV Digi Box.
Thank you. Another one. And it says turbo net and data bundle. Another one. I use one. Within all this teaching, I spend almost 1,000 Ghana on data every month. Salute, you people have to do something.
Dog. We'll talk offline.
I hear you. Then the final type of pricing we can talk about is market pricing. And this is where the products and services are priced looking at the prevailing conditions in the market, right? The final price that you set is based on the competitive nature of pricing that is going on in the market. And it requires you as the exporter or the global marketer to have a thorough knowledge of the costs implications of producing the product, as well as confidence that the product life cycle will be long enough to help you to be able to recoup whatever investments that you have made. So it is more of a reactive approach where you look at the general prices that are being charged on the market for products of a similar nature to what you are trying to sell in relation to the costs that you incurred in producing it and how long you think the product life cycle will be. So that is it for market pricing. Now, when it comes to pricing decisions, there are several environmental influences that can influence it. One is currency fluctuations, and these ones are largely beyond the control of the exporter. Sorry, please, a moment. Sorry about that. Okay. So like I was saying, the number one environmental influence that can influence pricing decisions is currency fluctuations. If you are selling in a country like the United States and you are exporting from Ghana to the United States, definitely the cost implications will change once your currency fluctuates. Because we know that for a long time, the Ghana cedi has been struggling against the dollar. So the moment the exchange rate changes, it will affect your entire export operation in terms of the cost you incur for getting your product from here to the United States and putting in place the necessary measures and resources to ensure that you can effectively market and sell it in that foreign region. So currency fluctuations are one of the ways by which pricing decisions can be significantly impacted. Another way is through inflationary environments that may occur in specific markets. A product that per se was selling at say $1 or $2, due to inflation, you may not be able to sell for $2 anymore. You may have to increase the price because the conditions in the market are not enabling you to sell at the price that you previously used to sell. And this goes back to the nature of price to be able to change and fluctuate at random, because inflation is unpredictable. So the moment it happens, you quickly have to adjust your prices to be able to reflect the changes in the marketplace. And sometimes marketers get to benefit because if the costs that you incurred in producing the product is low, the moment inflation takes place and the prices go up, you get to earn extra income from what you have already produced, even though you are not incurring any extra cost in producing it, right? So there are pros and cons to inflation in any foreign environment, and they affect the nature of pricing decisions of marketers within these markets. Also, we can talk about government controls, subsidies, and regulations. Like I was saying, depending on the controls that governments have in a particular sector, it can influence the pricing of products within that sector. It can influence the cost implications of sourcing raw materials and even importing the products, assuming you are manufacturing them in a third country to bring them for sale in that particular country. So the cost implications of having the product manufactured in the current foreign market that you want to sell in are totally different from when perhaps you are manufacturing it in your home country and exporting it to the foreign market, or manufacturing it in a third country and exporting it to the foreign market for sale. And all these things can either be done or be inhibited as a result of government controls and perhaps subsidies and regulations that they have set. We saw this in the example with Apple and in the Indian market, where government controls prevented them from importing most of the Apple products that they sell to come and sell in the Indian market from other countries. And it had significant cost implications such that it made the Apple phones very expensive because there were a lot of government regulations that was imposing a lot of taxes and duties on the items that they were importing into India for sale. Unlike those companies that went along with the government regulations in India and set up their factories in India, they had lower levels of cost, which reflected in the prices at which they could sell their final products to the Indian market. So that is how government controls, subsidies, and regulations can influence pricing decisions. And then, like I mentioned in the explanation I was giving about India, the issues of sourcing and using it as a strategic pricing tool can also influence the pricing decisions of firms in foreign markets. Because like I mentioned, depending on where you're sourcing your raw materials from, it can have cost implications for you. If your raw materials are being sourced in the foreign market and the manufacturing is being done in the same place, it reduces the level of cost you have to incur with regards to transporting the raw material to the factory for manufacturing activities to take place. So thinking about it in terms of sourcing, firms can actively decide to let sourcing be one of the major decisions that influence their choice of entry mode. Because when we were talking about entry modes, remember we mentioned the issue of upstream and downstream activities and how they can influence your choice of entry mode. And sourcing is an issue that has to do with upstream level activity, where you are looking for raw materials to be able to put into producing your final product for sale. So right from your choice of an entry mode, you are beginning to determine how you can price your products, how expensive you can price them, or how low you can price them, depending on what this entry mode presents to you with regards to influences for sourcing and government controls and regulations, and how you can use those to price the products that you are offering for sale in the foreign market. So now that we are aware of the environmental influences, what pricing alternatives do we have as global marketers? There are three main ones we can talk about. The first one is extension or ethnocentric pricing. And this one calls for the per unit price of an item to be the same no matter where in the world the buyer is located. So if we are selling the item and we are in Ghana, and we are selling the same thing in Ghana that we are selling in the US, if it is 50 cedis in Ghana, it should be the equivalent of 50 cedis in American currency, the equivalent of 50 cedis in Nigerian currency, and so on and so forth. And that is what we refer to when we talk about ethnocentric pricing. However, apart from that, we can use what we call adaptation or polycentric pricing, which permits subsidiary or affiliate managers or independent distributors of the company in the different markets to establish whatever price they feel is most appropriate within their market environment. Because perhaps the cost implications for marketing our product in the home country may not be the same as marketing it in a foreign country like, say, Saudi Arabia or America. Perhaps there are more cost implications in those markets, and therefore the product would have to be sold at a higher price to be able to recoup the amount of investment or resources that have been put into marketing the product in those markets. And hence, it may call for an adaptation of polycentric pricing approach. However, the marketer can ultimately decide to use a geocentric pricing approach, where the pricing is approached from a more dynamic and proactive perspective. And with this pricing approach, the marketer comes to the realization that unique local market factors have to be recognized in arriving at pricing decisions. So you are looking at all the unique local markets generally across the globe and letting that guide you to be able to formulate a pricing strategy that helps you to be able to concentrate your pricing within specific geographic settings. And let that guide how you offer the products for sale within those particular settings. And that's what we call geocentric pricing. So it's dynamic and proactive depending on the geographic region that you're operating in. Unlike the adaptation strategy where you are allowing whoever is operating the marketing and sales aspect of the product in whatever market to unilaterally determine how much they want to sell the product on their own in that particular market. And on that note, we've come to the end of our session. I don't know if anyone has anything they want to say, anything they want to speak on or add before we proceed.